everybody. Welcome to our DTx webinar. So today's webinar is going to be from 11 to 12 p.m. and today is Tuesday, July 9th. This webinar is session 5 in our webinar series and is titled Selecting and Implementing DTx in Care Delivery, presented by Dr. Renae Beaumont. This is a free educational event brought to you by the Louisiana Department of Health, Office of Behavioral Health, Northeast Delta Human Services Authority, and Foundation for Wellness. It is accredited for 1 hour for AMAPR Category 1 credits, nursing, LPCs, and social worker general. You can also find the information on accreditation on our website, and I believe it was emailed to everyone before the event. Full participation of this presentation is required to receive credit, and we monitor throughout the session. In 1 week, you'll receive instructions from Foundation for Wellness with how to get your credits. So as a reminder, if you dialed in by phone, meaning you're using your phone as audio, please email info@Foundation for Wellness with the phone number. And in that email, put the phone number you dialed in with your first and last name so we can mark you as attended. We are having one more webinar in this series. It's going to be on August 6th. If you visit foundationforwellness.com/DTx, you can register for that webinar. The Activity Planning Committee and the Physician Planner have no disclosures. Dr. Renae Beaumont has disclosed the following: consultant for Cognoa Inc., royalties from the sale of Secret Agent Society program materials from Social Science Translated, and then a consultant for NEN and a consultant for Kinzu. And a little bit about our speaker. Dr. Renae Beaumont is an award-winning clinical psychologist who is the founder of the online gaming-based therapy program, Secret Agent Society, SAS. Originally from Australia, Dr. Beaumont moved to the U.S. 9 years ago and is currently a faculty member and clinician at Weill Cornell Medicine, New York Presbyterian Hospital. She is passionate about using technology, innovative approaches to improve the mental health and well-being of youth and families. Her research has examined the feasibility, acceptability, and effectiveness of wearables, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and therapeutic apps and platforms to assess and treat psychiatric conditions. Thank you, Dr. Beaumont, for being here. She has, we're going to have a very engaging conversation today. So I really want to encourage our attendees to use the chat feature and the Q&A feature. If you have a specific question, please put those questions in the Q&A and she'll get to it at the end of the presentation or probably throughout too. And be sure to have your chat up. And so we'll be kind of conversing with all the attendees throughout the presentation. So Dr. Beaumont, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much, Ashley, and welcome everyone. I'm just going to start by sharing my screen and then we'll get into it. All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen. So welcome to today's webinar on selecting and implementing digital therapeutics, or DTx, as it's often referred to, in care delivery. Financial disclosures, some of these were already presented by Ashley, but I am employed as a clinical psychologist at Weill Cornell Medicine. I specialize particularly working with children and adolescents with anxiety disorders, ADHD, and autism. I'm a consultant at NEN, which is a digital therapeutic company, and the digital product that they distribute is to address pain management in children with cancer. Cognoa, which is a company that created and distributes a digital diagnostic for children with autism, and Kinzu, which is a company that developed a child-friendly and family-friendly social media platform. As it was mentioned before by Ashley, I am the original creator of Secret Agent Society. I do receive royalties, but I'm not employed, nor do I own the company that distributes that program. So let's get into it. So in terms of our objectives for today, I'm hoping that by the end of our hour together, you'll feel more confident in selecting evidence-based digital therapeutics to enhance your patient care, to kind of have a sense of the roadmap for effectively integrating these products into your workflow to build organizational capacity, and to evaluate if and how digital tools are improving outcomes, not just for your patients, but in terms of broader outcomes, maybe for you as a clinician, your organization, or society at large. So just as a reminder, or to set the scene for those of you who maybe haven't joined some of the previous webinars that have been offered in this series, this definition of digital therapeutics was first shared by Professor Risa Weisberg in the very first webinar in this series. So digital therapeutics deliver medical interventions directly to patients using evidence-based, clinically evaluated software to treat, manage, and/or prevent a broad spectrum of diseases and disorders. So most of my presentation today is going to focus on mental health and behavioral health, because obviously that's my area of specialization, but there are broader applications for physical health conditions as well. So the first thing I would like everyone who's joining today to reflect on is thinking about, how do you choose the right digital therapeutic? And what is the right digital therapeutic or therapeutic tools for you working in your particular clinical setting with the patient population that you serve? So I have 6 main considerations. There are many more, but these are what I consider the top 6 when it comes to thinking about integrating digital therapeutics into your clinical care. These tips also relate to digital technologies more broadly. So as you saw in the previous slide, digital therapeutics have a very specific definition, but there may be other digital tools that don't meet those specific criteria that you think would be a value add in your clinical care. And these same 6 recommendations would apply. So starting with, what is your unmet clinical need? What do you consider to be the pain points in treating those conditions? And also be very thoughtful about the demographics of patients you serve. Everything from age, race, ethnicity, gender identity, socioeconomic status as some of the key variables to keep in mind. Then very important is safety, data privacy, security, and effectiveness considerations. So the check of approval that many of us really look for is FDA clearance or approval. And it gives us peace of mind, hey, this is effective, and the data privacy security has kind of been covered, and when there's not going to be authorized data sharing of patient data, for example. Another sort of indicator can be what's called high trust certification, which sort of kind of ensuring HIPAA compliance, as well as some other checkboxes. And then looking at research on the product where possible, and really to deep dive into that. Like, was this product validated, or has it been tested on a patient population that seems to the one you're working with? Also looking at the study design. So was there some sort of control group? Was there some sort of care as usual with this digital product? What was the value above care as usual for this product? And then I always love to speak with others using this product in their clinical care, and ideally speaking with others who are working with similar patients to mine in a somewhat similar clinical setting or context. Then thinking about equipment, internet speed, and accessibility. So does your organization or do your patients have access to the net? So if you're looking at some sort of virtual reality software, for example, do you have VR headsets? Other apps, you might be needing iPads for use either in session or by patients between session. So thinking about the logistics of the equipment. And is the DTx or digital therapeutic product compatible across a range of devices? That's particularly important if patients are using it, because they'll often have a range of different phones, tablets, laptops, PCs. So you want to be confident that whatever they're trying to use actually works on the device they're using it with. What internet speed's needed for the product to work? And are there some elements that may be accessible to patients offline, particularly important for underserved families who maybe don't have reliable internet access? And I have to say, even at the clinic where I work, internet access is glitchy. And then being mindful of needing IT clearance, or at our hospital at New York Presbyterian Hospital is a new technology assessment committee, or NTAC, that has to sort of review these products and give them the check of approval in terms of data privacy and security before clinicians are able to actually put them into action. So checking out what is the IT clearance that would be needed within your organization. Now, once you've gone through those steps, obviously the big question is like, how much does this cost and who's going to pay for it? So I think you've seen in some of the previous webinars that trying to get payer reimbursement through insurance for some of these products is a slow process. There have been some small wins in certain states with certain products, with certain insurance companies, but there's certainly not universal coverage, and there's a lot of advocacy going on. So in many instances, there may not be insurance coverage for patients to use these particular products. It's worth asking the DTx company, hey, is this insured within my state, within certain insurance plans? But you're often having to think about how else are we going to cover the cost of these products. So if you're in a large organization, there may be gifting, donations, foundation funding, or grant funding you can apply for. Is there internal organizational funding that a manager or leadership can unlock? There are certain products that literally I am paying out of pocket for, because I believe in them so much in terms of the value add to my clinical care. Patients are often having to pay out of pocket. And then, I would encourage you, a lot of these products are very new in the marketplace. So if it is something that's very new, there aren't many organizations or clinics using a particular product, I think there's no harm in saying, hey, we're willing to give it a pilot test and try it out with a patient population. Would you be willing to give us a free trial for a certain period of time, or with a certain number of patients to test it out? So they're considerations to keep in mind for sure. Then training, ease of onboarding, and using the product, and tech support. So really finding out how long does it take to be trained to use this particular digital therapeutic product. Most of them, it's like an hour for the clinician. It's super simple, can be scheduled at a time that works for you. What does that training actually involve? And how easy is the product to use, both for you as the clinician, if there's some sort of clinician online portal, but also for the patient? Again, I recommend speaking with other clinicians or asking for recommendations of other people you can connect with to find out about the ease of use, how easy it was to get on board to use it, tech issues, and then finding out what tech support the digital therapeutic company provides to yourself, but also to your patients, and during what hours. Can they call, text, email? What hours do they provide support? So as I mentioned, I'm a child and adolescent psychologist. A lot of the caregivers I work with who may be setting this up for their children will be doing it after hours or on weekends. A lot of these digital therapeutic companies are providing tech support during business hours. So that can be tough for them because there's asynchronous support provided to them. They're trying to install it on their device. It's not working. They want help right then and there, and they're not able to access it after hours or weekends in many cases. So just keeping that in mind. And then finally, how are you going to know if these products are actually adding value in terms of whatever metrics or outcomes matter most to you as the clinician and specifically to the patient? So finding out, does the actual product itself provide patient and or provider output on how much a patient's using it? A lot of these products, patients might use them for the first few days, then they kind of get bored, disinterested, lose motivation, they stop using it. And that sometimes can compromise the improvements they make in their clinical care if they're not continuing to use it. What level of symptom reduction is being achieved through using the product, and also as well as reduction in kind of, challenges or concerns. We want to see if there's maybe any improvements in well-being or other functional improvements. So for example, when I was talking about the digital therapeutic product for children who have cancer, and one of its goals is reducing pain or pain management, we would love to see for kids going through cancer treatment, provided it's at the appropriate juncture in their care, not just a reduction in pain, but if they've been missing a lot of school because of that pain, improvements in being able to attend school because the pain is more manageable, and that can help in multiple dimensions of their functioning in terms of social connectedness with peers and academics, and just returning back to kind of what they may aspire for life to look like and what their parents aspire for life to look like for them. So the enhancements and improvements, as well as reduction in symptoms like depression or anxiety, for example. So I'm going to give you an example of how this applies in my clinical care with the Secret Agent Society program that I mentioned. So a bit of a mapping exercise. So Secret Agent Society is a video gaming-based therapy platform that's designed to improve emotion regulation and social connectedness in children aged 8 to 12 who have diagnoses of autism without intellectual impairment, ADHD, anxiety, or just social emotional challenges without a formal diagnosis as such. The way the program is structured is that there are clinician-supported group sessions or club meetings, as we call it, with 4 to 6 kids who are experiencing some of these challenges. Typically, in my delivery, I do it over 10 weeks, and we have 1 session per week. I'm the club leader or clinician who facilitates. It can be delivered either online through telehealth or in person, and there's a concurrent parent group coaching session as well for parents. There's school staff tip sheets that are pushed to teachers and school support staff via an integrated platform, so they know what the kids are learning in the program and how to help them put these skills into action in class or at break times. There's a video game kids play between the weekly club meetings to introduce them to the skills they're learning in a fun, self-paced way. And there's also missions or skills practice tasks they do after their weekly child club meetings to put the skills they're learning into action at home and school. And we have a skill tracker companion app, which tracks their use of social emotional skills, like using relaxation gadgets to calm down, for example. It tracks the use of those skills at home and school over the course of the program and once the weekly club meetings end. So if we look at an evaluation of how this might fit for my clinical care and the services that I deliver through the Weill Cornell Medicine faculty practice, which is kind of like a private practice, essentially. My unmet clinical need was serving the needs of individuals with autism, ADHD, and anxiety disorders. Specifically, I work a lot with 8 to 12-year-olds. There's racial diversity in the clinical population that I serve. In the faculty practice or private practice, it's mainly middle to upper income families. Then one of our hospital affiliated clinics that delivers the program, they deliver it more to underserved families. The clinical targets of what are the main concerns that these patients have when I'm working with them are troubles around emotion regulation. So anxiety management, frustration tolerance, low mood, and troubles making and keeping friends, particularly in the wake of the pandemic, where the social life of many of these children was really disrupted. So in terms of the fit of this product for my clinical population, it fits very well. This was the clinical population it was designed to serve, and they are the clinical targets of the particular digital therapeutic. So then if we look at safety, data privacy, and effectiveness, this program does not have FDA clearance or authorization, but it is HIPAA compliant. There are a number of peer-reviewed published papers that show that it's effective in improving emotion regulation and social connectedness in children who are very similar to the clinical population that I serve. So that gives me some confidence this should work for me. Then if we move into the equipment, internet speed, accessibility, logistics, in the private practice that I work in, most children have access to a tablet or a PC or a laptop that they're able to play their video game at home, actually bring their device to session, and we sync all the devices to play the games and activities in session. For the hospital-affiliated clinic, they actually have a series of iPads in the clinic that kids sync up and use those devices as opposed to bringing in a device from home for their Secret Agent Society club meetings or sessions. The software is compatible on both iOS and PC, so it kind of meets the needs of a range of different devices children can have. One challenge we do have, though, or that I have in delivering this in our private practice clinic is the internet is really glitchy. You may even find during this presentation, I may come in and out. So at times we've got 4 kids in group, I'm leading a session, it says lost connection to server on all their devices, and that causes them to get anxious and stressed, and we all have to log on again. So that is a consideration that can cause frustration at times in facilitating the weekly club meetings with the kids. cost and who pays. So for the actual clinician time for delivering the child group meetings and the parent group coaching sessions, there are existing CPT codes here in New York that are used. For the actual clinician portal access, so it's a yearly subscription, I pay out of pocket for that as a clinician. And then for the hospital delivery to underserved families, there's hospital funding to cover the cost of that in that particular clinic. And then for the individual children or families, the cost of their access to the digital therapeutic, they pay for that out of pocket, the families themselves in our private practice clinic. And then for underserved families in our hospital clinic, there's donor and foundation funding that's used to cover the annual subscription for a given child. Final two metrics or dimensions we spoke about: the training, ease of onboarding and use, and tech support. So the objective of the training course for this program isn't just using this product, it's working with groups of children who have a range of different conditions and social emotional learning challenges, and how do you tailor clinical care to their needs. So because it's a broader objective than just using a platform, it is a more intense practitioner training process. It's 14 hours online on-demand clinician training course. Given the current youth mental health crisis, that's a considerable investment of time for any clinician. And it can be a barrier, like finding 14 hours and paying for the cost of the online training for some clinicians and organizations is an obstacle for sure. There's also, if there's an assistant helping out with the group, there's a 2-hour online on-demand assistant training course. Now, the platform is really designed to tailor the content that's shown in session to the learning needs and preferences of the individual child. So if it's a child who has trouble, like language processing issues, then the content shown on their screen will be much more visual. If it's a child who's gifted and talented, loves detail, the content shown to them in session on screen will be much more detailed. So because of all these customizations that the clinicians sort of like Wizard of Oz behind the scene, choosing the format that content will be presented on different children's devices in session, that customization often equates to greater complexity in terms of how you use this. So it can take clinicians a while to master using this platform. And then the tech support, as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm originally from Australia. So the tech support for this product is provided from Australia during business hours, Monday to Friday. Now, that sometimes works in our favor for American families, because if they're trying to get online at night or having tech issues, the night here is the workday in Australia. So that works. But on weekends, if they're trying to, do certain activities or play parts of the video game and needing tech support, there isn't that provided online via email. So often we will find that families are reaching out to you as the clinician. You're the trusted source who recommended this. There's an existing rapport or relationship. So figuring out how you're going to manage that, setting expectations up front, and if inquiries are coming your way as the clinician, like how are you going to offload them? What's that process is an important consideration as you start to use these products in your clinical care. Then there's the metrics of engagement and effectiveness. Now, for this particular program, there's a clinician dashboard and also a caregiver portal, which provides information on how many sessions children and parents attended, which activities they did in session, which parts of the video game they played, what emotions they seem to be doing better or not so great at in recognizing from facial expression, voice tone, body posture clues, how well they're applying social emotional skills, like using relaxation gadgets, for example, at home and school, with the companion app that tracks that, between session mission completion. So they have skills challenges or missions they do between session to put the skills they're learning from the program into action, and then self-reflect and create pictures with a scene generator of what they did well in using a skill, like thinking helpful thoughts, for example, and areas for improvement to build that self-awareness. And also their performance on validated measures, child report, parent report, and teacher report of social emotional functioning before and after the program, and at 3 and 6 month follow-up after the program ends. So I know there are a number of people I think who are joining who have a particular interest in opioid use disorder and substance use disorder, or that's the clinical population they're serving. Full disclosure, it's not my area of specialization. You may have heard from previous presenters, there used to be available prescription digital therapeutic called Reset and Reset O. Unfortunately, the company that developed and distributed these filed for bankruptcy earlier this year. So to my knowledge, they're not currently available. Hopefully, there's things going on behind the scenes, and hopefully they may be re-released in some form in the future. But in the meantime, I think it's webinar 2 in this series. You would have maybe seen a presentation by Chess Health, and they I don't know them personally, but certainly my impression is they're doing really incredible work in terms of digital tools and digital solutions to help with prevention, intervention, and recovery for substance use disorder. So if that's an area you're particularly working in, I'd encourage you, if you haven't already done so, have a look at webinar 2 in the series. So, key takeaways to think about choosing the right DTx product. This is a summary of key considerations. The first is know your patient population and compare it to the demographics of the participants that the digital therapeutic has been validated or tested on. Ask to see published papers of outcome data, even if the product has FDA approval, so you can the devil's often in the detail. How well is this likely to translate to your particular workplace with the patients you serve? Ask to speak with other clinicians or independent providers who are using the product with a similar patient population in a similar clinical context as yours, if possible. And if the response you get is, oh, we don't really have anyone, and it's a really new product that isn't really being used by others out there as part of standard clinical care, ask, well, if we're one of the first to try this out, is there any chance we might get a free trial? The worst that the company can say is no. Be sure you fully understand all the time commitments and costs involved in using the product, and plan upfront how you're going to cover these. So this includes buying or renting equipment or devices in some instances, like virtual reality headsets, if it's a VR software product, training in using the product, implementation support for yourself as the clinician potentially and or your patients, and then consultations associated with getting patients onboarded and using the product, and realizing and being very clear about what role are you going to play in that as the clinician, and are there others in your workplace who may help with that. So while you may first introduce the product to a patient, there may be someone in like a digital navigator role in your organization who helps them literally install the app on their phone, who may help with the redirection to the tech support team of the digital therapeutic product if patients are having difficulties. So there may be sort of an in-between person in sort of a digital navigator role in addition to yourself as the clinician introducing the product. Know the product well as a clinician. It's really important. If you're going to be recommending it to a patient, they need to see confidence within you that you think it's going to work for them to feel confident to give it a go. So, take the time. You don't have to know everything about a product before you start using it, but take the time to maybe have a play yourself before recommending it to others, and where possible, have patients on board with using the software or device or digital tool during a consultation with yourself or a digital navigator affiliated with your organization. Just sending them away to set it up at home for some patients can feel overwhelming. The follow through and actually getting set up and trying it out is likely to be less. All right, so I'd like everyone to take a little moment. You can jot this down, you can put it in the chat, just to reflect on some of these different dimensions. I need to fix the numbering on this list. I realize we've got 2 ones. But what is your unmet clinical need? What might be relevant safety, data privacy, security, and effectiveness considerations for the particular product you might be considering? Is there any specialist equipment you think you might need or need to provide for patients? Are there considerations around internet speed access? Starting to think about the cost piece and who might be able to pay. Do you have grant opportunities? Is there any funding earmarked? Do you work with a patient population who may have the capacity to pay for these products? Thinking about training, ease of onboarding, and using the product and tech support. And then how will you know if this is achieving the objectives you have for using it with your patient population? What are the sorts of metrics or outcomes that you'd potentially be looking for? And ideally, some of those are going to be embedded in the actual product that's going to capture that data and then be able to provide you and or the patient with a report so you get a sense of, are they even using this product? And does it seem to be effective? So I'd like to give you just a couple of minutes, jot down some ideas. You might share them in the chat. If you have specific questions on choosing the right digital therapeutic, feel free to kind of post those in the Q&A as well. And then I'll pause to give you a chance to reflect on that before we move on to the next section of today's webinar. All right, I just saw a question in the chat about how do you keep an autistic child engaged with DTx? So I'm going to answer that while some of you are maybe thinking through some of these other questions on the screen. Keeping in mind, I mainly work with 8 to 12-year-olds. This particular product that I spoke about has, animation. It really provides a lot of scientific explanations of concepts like body clues that signal how we're feeling. So it's funny the question that was asked, how do we keep them engaged? If anything, the greater challenge is how do we get them off the DTx? They often really enjoy it. Some kids prefer to review certain parts of it multiple times, which consolidates their understanding. But in the context of Secret Agent Society, they're doing some self-reflection or self-evaluation in their weekly group sessions on the DTx, on their device, and then putting those skills into action through role plays and games and activities with other children. So often the greater challenge clinically is getting them off the device to then practice these skills through, we've got a board game, we've got a helpful thought blaster game. It's the transition off. They really love the technology. It allows them for self-paced learning. They find technology often very, very engaging. So provided, the product's been ideally developed in conjunction with the clinical population that it's designed to serve, hopefully engagement isn't going to be such a challenge. Similarly, with playing the video game at home, we encourage a caregiver to play it with them or sit with them. So the caregiver's discovering and learning the language of the program and able to then prompt the child to use these skills in daily life when needed. But typically it's less of a challenge of getting them to play it. It can be more of a challenge setting expectations and process to support transition off it. All right, I'm just going to have another quick look at the chat. Yeah, I love the point that was made about data safety, privacy is the biggest one. Absolutely, very important. As a clinician, you don't want to be held liable for some breach around that. So you're really looking for things like, is it HIPAA compliant, FDA approved, and having whoever your IT support person is, whether it be an entire team in a large organization, or maybe someone who's contracted to help out with the IT side of your business if you're in private practice, make sure they do their due diligence in checking what is the data privacy, what is the data security with a product before you would start using it clinically. Cost is, sorry, I'm reading more comments in the chat here. Cost is always a concern. Absolutely. And it's a big challenge for everybody at the moment, which is why there is so much advocacy around hopefully some payers getting behind and reimbursing these products because it's a huge barrier for everybody in terms of realizing the potential of digital therapeutics. So far, how effective is the device translating into the real world with friends, family, and school? So speaking to Secret Agent Society, if we look at teacher report measures of kids' social emotional functioning before and after the program, parent report measures where they rate the child's ability to manage anxiety and anger, build friendships, and also child self-reflection, research shows improvements from the beginning to the end of the program, which is usually around 3 months. And really exciting is to show the improvements when we then assess those and repeat those same measures 3 months after the program ends, and then another 3 months after they end, 6 months after it ends. And then in one published paper, we even followed the kids up 1 year after they finished the program. The improvements in social emotional functioning across home and school environments on those measures were not just maintained, but enhanced even further at 3, 6, and 12-month follow-up, which is really exciting. And generalization to real world beyond just playing a digital product or being in a small group is a really important metric. So I'm really pleased whoever mentioned that in the chat raised that. When you're looking at published research, you don't just want to see improvement, a device showing the child understands what they should do, for example, when they feel anxious or angry. You want to be looking for published research that shows they're putting these skills into action, either whether it be through passive sensing data that's captured or it's validated, reliable parent report, child report, teacher report measures. For us, the teacher report data is very compelling because that's actually showing these skills are being, teachers are seeing these kids are better able to stay calm when they're doing their math test, or not lose it if other kids in their group don't want to try a certain activity their way. So you want to be looking to that data to really feel confident this is going to lead to real change, not just some improvements on some scales built into an app that really don't translate to everyday life. So I'm really pleased whoever made that comment. I appreciate it. Andrea. So in terms of teachers buying in, often we don't have teachers buy in. No. Often it's, they're very busy, they're overwhelmed. It's clinicians working closely with children, ideally parents, depending on their capacity to be involved as well. But we do use teacher report data collected at pre and post program where possible, and at 3 and 6 month follow-up. Sometimes teachers won't fill it out, but for our research trials, we actually have someone dedicated to following up with teachers to get that data, so we can capture that from a research rigor perspective. But we often have teachers who feel they don't have the capacity to read the tip sheets each week or prompt the child to use the skills, but we're still showing good generalization of skills to school, even in those kids who maybe don't have a teacher or school counselor. It doesn't have to be a teacher. It could be a school counselor. It could be a paraprofessional who maybe reads those teacher tip sheets. But exactly to the point, lots of variability as to schools' capacity to read those tip sheets and implement the strategies, but we still see skill generalization even in those children where that doesn't happen. Okay. Cost effective for families with more than one child. Can one machine be used by one family? Yeah, so I love that creative thinking. One way for parents who have multiple children, maybe not even multiple children who they feel are having social emotional challenges, but just the logistics of trying to look after multiple kids as a parent. Often they will make it a family activity. So they'll have 2 kids, maybe 3 kids, all jump on, play it together. They take turns. The parent may or may not be there, depending on the age and social emotional skill profile of the child. So yeah, there's nothing stopping other kids. They have one unique login for a child that tracks the progress throughout. But in terms of the actual gameplay at home, it might be one or more kids playing with siblings. That's certainly an option. All right, let me see if there are any other questions I missed. Okay, so I'll move on to the next section just in the interest of time. So then I want you to think about integrating a digital therapeutic into the workflow for yourself as a clinician, but also the other staff who work with you. So if you're thinking from a clinician perspective, well, how and when would I use this and what's it going to do? I think about 3 main points along the journey of clinical care for a patient who's engaging in services with me. So one is supporting them if you carry a wait list or your clinic carries a wait list. Sometimes those can be long. And if it's a goal and objective for yourself or your clinic to retain waitlist patients, then offering them or recommending digital products while they're waiting to see a clinician can be valuable. It can also lead them not going to other clinical services in your region or district if that's even an option for them. Therapeutic support. So you can integrate these products into what you're doing in session. I gave the example of that before. It may be teaching new skills. It may be practicing skills with a patient. You might encourage them to use the product between the clinical consultations or sessions they have with you, again, to teach skills, to practice skills, to give them support, to track or monitor symptoms or how they're going, and to self-reflect or evaluate on how certain skills are helping them in daily life. And that can help to reduce the length of clinical care with yourself, the number of visits, the frequency of visits, or even the duration of an individual consultation. And then as an adjunct to other interventions. So say you play an important role in medication management, you may recommend a digital product to enhance medication adherence or the patient taking the medication, but also to enhance other lifestyle factors. So if you think about an endocrinologist working with a patient who has diabetes, for example, as well as obviously the medication management and adherence for that, there are lifestyle factors like diet and exercise that have a huge impact on that patient's level of functioning, their well-being. So you may, they may recommend a particular digital therapeutic to help with providing personalized support around eating well, exercise, and related factors for enhancing functioning and well-being in a patient. And then after regular therapy sessions end, we want patients to continue to maintain or enhance the improvements that they've made. And so there can be a role for digital therapeutics in maintaining and providing ongoing support after regular sessions end. So in the waitlist support example, this is just one example. There's lots of ways this could be integrated, but you may have a list of vetted wellness or digital therapeutic products provided to prospective new patients by the intake coordinator or receptionist at the time the patient inquires about enrolling for clinical care. They would need to do a little bit of a screening to make sure that the products that are being recommended align with the patient's demographics and identify clinical needs. A prescription digital therapeutic. So in the case where a prescription is needed for the patient to access this, there may initially need to be a brief consultation with a clinician who prescribes the digital therapeutic. Unlike medicines, mental health professionals in general who are licensed are able to prescribe these products and introduce it to the patient. And then once that's happened, there may be a little bit of a waiting time for the patient to get further care with a clinician, but they're still getting some therapeutic support that's evidence-based while they're waiting. And in some instances, just accessing the digital therapeutic, the patient may feel they're doing well enough, they don't need clinical care. So it may help to reduce the wait list at your particular clinic. Then integration into therapy. So there may be many goals for why you might integrate a particular product into your therapeutic work. One might be enhancing patients' engagement or enjoyment of therapy. So helping if there's an issue around patient dropout, no-shows, patients saying they're bored with what you're doing in session. I work with children and teens, so making therapy engaging and where possible fun is a big motivator and drive for me to be using these products. So one product that we're looking at piloting and trialing in the fall is called Star Starter RX. This is a casual game that can be played on a tablet or on a phone. It's kind of, there's a little icons that move around the screen and you have to get them to hit certain things and avoid certain obstacles. And the research shows, particularly with adult population that's been validated on, that it seems to work well in reducing social anxiety. So we're going to be looking at trialing it in our adolescent partial hospitalization program. Many of the teens involved in this sort of intensive day program experience anxiety and depression. They attend a very structured curriculum of group therapy sessions over each day of the week. And we're going to dedicate some of the group therapy time to each of the young people in the unit. They generally don't get access to devices, but we're going to have iPads with this particular game installed where they get to play it 15 minutes a day, 4 days a week, over 4 weeks. That's the recommended dosage, and it aligns really well with how long patients are usually part of this program. And seeing, do patients like it? I'm guessing just having some access to a device while on the unit is going to be one incentive, but do they like it? And does it seem to add value in terms of improving anxiety symptoms over and above the patient care we were offering before introducing this? So is there clinical value add as well? Providing a more personalized therapeutic experience. So a lot of these apps, the user can go in and change their preferences, but also if there's AI data capture integrated, it will customize the content and alerts and notifications the user gets based on their use and based on maybe symptom tracking as well. Enhancing treatment effectiveness, so reviewing and applying skills between their scheduled clinical consultations with a provider. An example you may have heard of it is Wobot Health. So this is like a virtual coach where, if particularly for patients, adult patients with anxiety and depression, it has strong validation, and you may not be available, or I'm guessing you're not available at 2 a.m. when a patient's having an anxiety attack or feeling really down, but they can access this, type in and text, a particular concern or problem, and then this virtual coach provides, it's like a chatbot essentially, provides response. Now, this is a very responsible example of artificial intelligence. The responses have been determined by a team of clinicians with specialist skills in cognitive behavior therapy. So it's not generative AI where the response may be completely unrelated or inappropriate, but it's based on, information that was fed into the system by a team of clinicians specializing in cognitive behavior therapy. So that can provide on-demand support to a patient when they need it, unlike clinicians who I'm hoping are sleeping at 2 a.m. Reducing the duration, frequency, and number of in-person clinical visits, and addressing health equity and accessibility barriers. So, while they may not have a clinician available in their region, these sorts of products that are evidence-based can actually help with accessibility in underserved populations and also in rural remote communities, provided we can figure out the cost and payment model. I do provide that sort of caveat. Now, I did want to just flag the approval and negotiation process. So if you are thinking about using one of these products, it's important the lawyer for your practice or the legal department for your organization, there's typically a contract that has to be signed with the digital therapeutic company. So making sure that happens. And then IT clearance. I mentioned the importance of the safety, data privacy, and security. Having an expert in the IT department or your IT consultant provide input on that. So just as an example of integrating this into your workflow, once you've got those clearances, and that can take 3 or 4 months to get the lawyer and IT clearance and contract sorted, you need to think about who's going to pay and how, and that will typically involve a range of people. Then also dispensing the product and onboarding. And finally, the patient use. So monitoring of patient outcomes. Typically, these products aren't yet integrated into electronic medical records. So there needs to be consideration of, is there going to be a PDF output report that's imported, and ongoing monitoring and follow-up visits with patient care. So in the interest of time, I won't go into detail, but this is an example for EndeavorRx. This is a prescription digital therapeutic video game that improves attention in children with ADHD. And you can see from the point where a provider says, hey, I think this patient could benefit, and submits an online order for this, there are many steps that have to be navigated with the digital therapeutic company, Achille, validating the order, sending an email to the caregiver receiving the email, paying. Then after payment, they get a follow-up email. Then they have to actually download the app, and then the child plays it. And this is one of the more direct user pathways. So there are many steps that need to be considered. And as the clinician, being prepared that you're the person the patient trusts, they may be reaching out to you at any of these points, and knowing how you're going to support them, redirect them is important in getting them on board and using a product. And then obviously after treatment ends, maintaining treatment gains. So if you're doing a series of, say, 12 weekly sessions of cognitive behavior therapy, having a go-to digital therapeutic that the patient can revisit skills, continuing to track their progress, or providing on-demand support can help with maintaining or enhancing those treatment gains and reducing the need for ongoing visits with a provider. So I would encourage you to think about what your main goals might be using a digital therapeutic as part of your clinical care. What might be the main barriers, and how might these be overcome? Then the final step is evaluating. These things cost time, and they involve the investment of a lot of money and kind of effort and thoughtfulness of many people. So we want to know that they're adding value. And I think as clinicians, we often initially think about, well, what are the patient outcomes? But there are also important outcomes to consider for the clinician, the organization, and society as a whole. And this slide captures, there are many more, but some of the key ones at the patient level in terms of symptom reduction, improved quality of life, medication adherence if relevant, less engagement with acute care services like emergency room visits, hospitalizations, and overall satisfaction, not just with the digital therapeutic product, but with care in general. As clinicians, you might think, why am I going to go to all the effort of using this? It can be exciting to try new innovations, to see improved therapy or patient outcomes. Also, if it's reducing the burden of clinical care you're providing, it can help with burnout. And I strongly recommend if you're going to try something new, it can be really great to have at least one other clinician who's trying it out at the same time. So you can celebrate the wins together, but also help troubleshoot challenges and not feel alone in that process. At an organizational level, being able to see more patients, better outcomes, reduce dosage of clinical care, and being seen as a leader in innovative evidence-based healthcare. And then there's some important benefits that can be realized at a societal level if we can figure out the payment model at scale. So to finish up, I know I've got 3 minutes left, but I would encourage you to think about, like, if you were to try one of these products, what would be the primary outcomes for yourself or your organization? And then how might you assess these? So there are tools built into the product. Also, there may be additional validated questionnaires. Generally, you want something quick for patients to fill out and that's free or low cost. So if you're working with with depression, the PHQ-9 is a quick free tool. If you're working with anxiety, the GAD-7 can be good with adults. Ask the patient, what was their experience like with the product? Did they like it? Did they use it? What didn't they like? And also for yourself as the clinician, your organizational manager, getting your feedback. Looking at capturing electronic medical record data on outcomes like, if you look suicidality, say you work with a suicidal population, is there a reduction in medical room visits with using this particular tool if it's targeted towards depression? And if you're like, how would I capture this data or analyze it? See if there's a data analytics person within your organization who could help with that. And if there isn't, or even if there is, a lot of universities and colleges are looking to partner, departments of medicine in evaluating these tools. So you may be able to set up some sort of partnership with an academic institution, provided that the right safeguards are in place around data sharing, for them to do the data analysis for you and provide the findings as to how valuable these tools are. So hopefully you found today's webinar helpful in starting to think about how you might choose the right digital therapeutic, how you might integrate it into your workflow and those of your colleagues within your organization, and evaluating, is this tool adding value in your clinical care and to the patients that you serve? Thank you very much. I'm just going back to the chat. So I saw a question, does Medicaid pay for these services? It's spotty. There are certain products in certain locations where there is Medicaid coverage, but it's certainly not universal. And there's a lot of advocacy going on to get more universal Medicaid coverage for sure. I love the comment that was made about this would be an ideal product for instances like the pandemic where telemedicine becomes order of the day. Yes, but it's a great value add. Most of the work I do with young people is now in person. I do a little bit of telehealth, but it's a great value add to the in-person clinical care as well. Sorry, I'm just seeing if there's any other questions I missed.
Kathleen has a good question at the chat. If you scroll down to the very bottom.
Sorry. Oh.
Has there been any research or consideration on how these video games may affect children or who are already addicted to video games or spending too much time on their digital devices? Is that a part of the process to help determine if this is right for the client?
Great question. I love that, Kathleen. So most of the digital products have a time limit that a user can play. For the video gaming based digital therapeutics, there's a time limit that they can typically play the product. Also, in terms of the addictive potential, just speaking from clinical experience here, I tend not to find that kids get so addicted to these games like they might do to other games, because the way that they've been structured is carefully, like from the back end, is carefully designed to enhance engagement, but not use some of those variable reinforcement schedules that fuel addiction with things like social media or some of the more traditional video games you might see. So part of it is in the design, but also there's often safeguards and guardrails integrated into the product itself that limit gameplay time within one particular period of time, and parental controls around that as well.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the audience? We can put in the chat or put in the Q&A. Just got a lot of thank you, wonderful information from you in our chat. And I'm so happy that we're doing this. Dr. Beaumont and I were talking about this before we got on. Just, you know, it's great that the Louisiana Department of Health is putting this on, and thank you to everyone that's attending and learning about it. And we do have one more left in the series. So please attend this last one, tell your colleagues about the last one, and we'll be sending out a survey after this event. And after the last question on the survey, we're asking y'all to tell us what else do you want to hear. So if there are any other specific topics in this DTx world that you guys want to hear more of, I know it's very new. And so I'm so glad that we're doing this to help get the education out there, that this is kind of the way, you know, things are going. Technology is ever changing, and it's going to be here. It's going to be here. It's not going anywhere. So we're so great that we'll be able to put this presentation on and have experts like Dr. Beaumont come and share her wealth of knowledge with us. But thank you so much, Dr. Beaumont, for spending your lunch with us here in Louisiana virtually. We appreciate it. And your accent was just lovely to listen to for the last hour.
Thank you, Ashley. And I want to say a big thank you to the participants. I was so impressed by the level of audience participation with comments and questions in the chat. So thank you. This can feel overwhelming and daunting to dip your toe into digital therapeutics. So I love that people are asking questions and addressing like, I'm a bit worried about the security. It's only through voicing those concerns and having those discussions that we can find a way forward. So a big thank you to all the participants today.
Well, thank you so much. And as a reminder, everyone will get an email from info@Foundation for Wellness with information how to get their certificates. And we will see everyone hopefully at the next webinar in August. Thank you, Dr. Beaumont. Bye, everyone.